Okay, here we are. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to PD Active's Roundtable, virtual roundtable. My name is Todd Morrish, and Monique Buffler and I will be your moderators this evening with help from Kathy Ball. Monique, why don't you give a quick hand raise to identify yourself? You may not see her if you don't have her thumbnail on your screen. And Kathy, say hi. There we go. Good. All right. So we have a lot to cover this evening and only 90 minutes to squeeze it into. So I'm going to abbreviate my usual preamble. My ulterior motive is that getting to
I can't hear you, Todd.
Oh, how funny. I was talking to myself the whole time. Oh, sorry.
I thought maybe it was just me, but then I saw Melanie going.
Saw Melanie giving me the signals. Sorry, let me just start over. Good evening and welcome to PD Active's Ask the Experts virtual roundtable. My name is Todd Morrish, and Monique Buffler and I will be your moderators this evening with help from Kathy Ball. So Monique, give a hi like you did a minute ago. And Kathy, there we go. Good, identified. We have a lot to cover this evening and only 90 minutes to squeeze it into, so I'm going to abbreviate my usual long-winded preamble. My ulterior motive here is getting to Valentine's dinner on time and avoiding the couch tonight, so maybe you guys can relate. So we will definitely be ending this baby at 7 p.m. sharp. So if you are new to well, let me finish off this. Let's see, this event, but before we introduce our panelists, just a few quick points to make. If you are new to PD Active, by all means, check out our plethora of movement classes and support groups and other speaker events. You can learn more about these on our website, and Monique will paste that link to our calendar in the chat window now. By way of a preview, we do have some upcoming events we can let you know about now. On March 11th is our next virtual speaker forum, covering hallucinations and dementia with PD, with two renowned professors and doctors from the University College London. That'll be March 11th. That's a Saturday. Also, we're aiming for our annual information mini fair in May, probably on the 13th, but we're still waiting for some pieces to fall in place on that. And that will probably also, again, be at Lake Temescal like it was last year. That's the event where all of the PD Active vendors come to parade their services and products and for our members. So you mark that, but keep your eyes on the newsletter for more. By the way, the chat feature I mentioned a minute ago can be opened from the tool tray at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you'd like to pop that open now, then you'll see information coming to you from us. And we'll also ask you to use that tool to send us questions you have for either of our speakers. As for this event, once our speakers have been introduced, our expert this evening will walk through a brief PowerPoint presentation, and we will keep you all on mute or try to during the presentation to maintain flow. Following the presentation, we will hear from our community participant, whom I'll introduce also in a minute, and then we'll have an extended Q&A window. We may even throw in a short contest with a prize at the end, so do pay attention. Melanie's presentation, which we'll be walking through in a minute, will be saved as a PDF and posted up on our PD Active website under past events. We will send out a link to that in a day or so following this event, and that will come to all registrants also, not just members, but everybody that registered for the event. During the presentation, we will pop up a couple of poll questions for you to answer. Those will be answered in flight during the presentation so that Melanie has an idea of what some of your feedback is and how she might cater her presentation to that end. So fun way to get involved for you folks. You are certainly free to not answer them if you like and just close the dialog box when it pops up. But otherwise, if you can give it a quick answer, we'll move quickly from launching the poll to publishing its results. So, an important note, this webinar is being recorded, as you heard a moment ago. So thank you to Melanie and our speakers for allowing us to do that. It will be posted on the PD Active YouTube channel in the next few days. And Monique can paste that link to that YouTube channel in the chat window now, and of course that will also be sent out to you after the fact. PD Active depends on donations to bring programs and events like this to our members free of charge. If you value these sessions, please do make a contribution and consider becoming a monthly donor to sustain these events. Monique, if you don't mind, you can paste that donation link into the chat window now also. Anybody, by the way, wanting to grab this information can copy it out of the chat window and paste it into a side document, if you like, a Word document or an email, whatever you like. There's also a way at the end of this, if somebody reminds me, to save the chat content for yourselves for referrals after the fact. Now, without further delay, PD Active is pleased to introduce to you our expert for this evening's roundtable, Melanie Henry. Melanie, give a wave. There she is. So if you don't see Melanie foremost, you can grab the thumbnail of any image you like and move it to the center and to the top anytime you like. So there's also a feature, if you mouse to the upper right hand corner of your Zoom viewable screen, there's a link that says view, and you can select which view option you want, including speaker, which is what I use. That just means that that speaker's image is primary when she's or he is doing the speaking. So that's an option for you to consider. Let's see. Melanie has her own dedicated slide coming up in a minute here in her presentation, detailing her experience and qualifications. So I'm going to leave that to you, Melanie, in that slide that I saw in your deck. So we'll come to that in a minute. But our community participant I wanted to introduce to you for this evening is Michelle Cheeseman. Not long ago, Michelle wrote an article on this topic entitled, "My Recent Ride with PD and the DMV License Renewal Process." Sounds daunting, but I've read it and it's a great read. It's a very short read. So since she's got relevant and fresh experience on that, we have invited her along as well. Let's see, Michelle, we'll ask you to raise your hand. And in fact, if I can just take a moment to make Michelle a co-host, that way you guys can all see her at the top here. Hang on just a moment if you all don't mind.
I just put the link to the blog post in the
Oh,
chat
good for
for
you.
everybody.
Excellent, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I've just made Michelle a co-host. So when the time comes, Michelle, we'll give you a chance to raise your hand and give us a quick rundown of your story. Let's see, where did I leave off? By the way, I know we also have several other PD Active members with relevant and fresh experience joining us this evening. So we might also expect to hear from Ilana or Jim or Julie or anyone else. This is a roundtable, and by nature it's discussive and interactive. So if you have some of your own experience to share when it comes time to the Q&A session, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, or just literally like a classroom, raise your hand, or take yourself off mute and pipe up. All right. Okay, so without further ado, Melanie, I will share screen and find the right screen to share and launch you on your merry way. Hang on one second. Okay, I presume everyone can see my screen. Good. All right.
Okay.
Melanie, drive on and I will navigate to my best.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. What a terrific organization, super organized, and so many people. I'm really happy to be here and share what I know about driving, and especially when you have a Parkinson's diagnosis. So next slide, please. Todd, here's the master tonight for this. So this is the outline of what I'm going to try and hopefully cover tonight. I'm not going to read it all out because time is of essence. Next slide, please. So who am I? I have a background in social welfare, case management, and risk assessment. I'm a dual citizen. I am Americanized and had my citizenship ceremony. I moved here 15 years ago, and it was pretty terrifying because I had to learn all over again how to drive on the right side of the road. And my husband at the time refused to let me go to driving school. And so it was a crash course. There were some hair-raising moments. So I have an appreciation for some of the challenges that people can have on the road. I was a private in-home caregiver for a number of years, working with seniors, seeing directly some of the challenges being behind the wheel. And I was a transportation coordinator with a local nonprofit here in the Tri-Valley, where I was giving medical rides for seniors, and many of them were still driving, but had medical and medication issues, and really began to see that we needed here in the Bay Area an independent, objective driving assessment service. I'm a licensed driving instructor, which means that I help many people who are getting ready for their DMV on road. I'm able to help them, older drivers, get some refresher, get some defensive driving skills improvement, building on their confidence. And I'm currently going through a driver rehabilitation professional certification. And I own the Driver Cognitive Assessment Center, which is where I am right now. I'm at my office. Next slide. So driving skills, and this whole presentation will be, as Todd said, up on the site. And I may not have time to read everything and share everything here, but for most of us, you know, driving is the ultimate in independence. And intellectually, we know that, you know, driving is a privilege, but in our hearts, we really do feel that it's a right, a lot of us. And so when adult children, spouses, or doctors think about taking driving privileges away, reactions are understandably pretty strong. And so I want you to think of driving as an overlearned skill, like playing the piano or typing, something that you learn over many years and you fine tune. But it does require the ability to multitask. And it is a skill that for the most part holds up well as we age. But as we all age, we all begin to experience some changes that can impact being behind the wheel. Slide. So in 2018, according to the National Highway Traffic Authority, over 6,907 people aged 65 years and older were killed in traffic crashes, making up 19% of all traffic fatalities. And what's really frightening about this, on top of that number, is that these fatal crashes occurred during the day. Where are we there? Occurred during the day on weekdays and involved multiple vehicles. Next slide. So these are some of the common crash scenarios for older drivers. The left-hand turns are particularly challenging, can be, changing lanes or merging, rear-end collisions and roundabouts. Next slide. These two slides here are showing vehicles that have ended up inside storefronts. The one on the left with Alameda County was that incident that happened last year at the Trader Joe's in Castro Valley. And the other one is somebody that's gone into a dollar store. Next slide. So there's a group called the Storefront Safety Council, who began in 2017, started to gather all of the data, and they want to put an end to the vehicle into building crashes. And every day in the US, there's as many as 100 crashes a day into stores, bus stops, post offices, restaurants, you know, shopping centers. All you have to do is go on YouTube and you'll see horrific images. More than 16,000 people are injured every year, with 2,600 deaths resulting from these largely preventable accidents. And what they've found, this group's found, is that if there's a storefront that is facing in the immediate path of the direction that a car is traveling, when somebody has an incident and they've got confusion with the gas or the brake pedal, the car will continue to move forward. And there's a very easy solution. They are those concrete, they're about 4 foot tall, those concrete pillars, they cost about $700 each. If they put those all along the front of the storefronts, many of these cars would not be able to get inside. Slide. So of all of our senses, vision is the most important sense we have when driving. And the majority of decisions we make are influenced by what our eyes see on the road, and this depends on a number of factors. And we need good vision for defensive driving. We need to be able to scan ahead and anticipate potential hazards. Next slide. But sometimes older drivers may have stiff joints, arthritis in muscles, trouble seeing and hearing, slower reaction time and reflexes. And some people with PD, Parkinson's, may experience vision issues on top of all of that that could interfere with the skills needed for driving. And so I really ask that everyone here, don't just rely on the eye exam at your annual primary care physician checkup. It's often overlooked. Try and see an optometrist every single year. Some people may experience dry eye, double vision, difficulty reading, and there can be changes in the muscles used to move the eye. These changes could be a result of the disease, or they could be related to the medications that are being used to treat PD. Next slide. So how does vision change with aging? So for all of us, we become more sensitive to glare. Our ability to switch from near and far changes. It becomes more difficult to read the icons on dashboards. Focusing on small objects and prints can be more challenging. Sometimes you might be in a restaurant, you find that you need different glasses to read the menu. Our reduced peripheral, which is all of this side vision, starts to change, and that really is our early warning system for defensive driving. And our eyes need more time to adjust when we're driving from a dark to a light area, like, shady area to the sunshine, or an indoor parking garage to an outdoor. And there's a diminished ability to see between colors. So just so you catch my slide here. Some people with PD may also have some challenges with visual scanning, which is about being able to scan the environment, be able to see a change, things like a traffic light changing, seeing a car with the brakes come on ahead, or a need to pick up the speed, or see a pedestrian stepping off the curb who's looking at their phone and not paying any attention, or a child running out on the street. Some people with PD may have decreased ability to be able to judge distance. For example, like the distance between your car in front of you, the position of your car on the road, being able to stay in your lane and not drift. And when we pass and change lanes in busy traffic, we need to have accurate judgment of those distances between the moving objects. Some people may have trouble where they're hitting the curbs or median strips and parking inside marked lines. So, as I was saying earlier, the left-hand turns at intersections can be extremely challenging and especially dangerous when there are changes going on with these spills. I talked about contrast sensitivity and the difference between ability to distinguish between colours, for example, like traffic signals or road signs. And decreased depth perception. We need both eyes to function properly for reliable depth perception. So how that shows up in driving is that it can be difficult to judge when starting to slow down for a stop sign or when to pull out into an intersection. Not quite where you're at there, Todd. There's another one. There's another one called, they call it our sixth internal sense. And it's for some people with PD, knowing where your body is in space. And for some, it can be a challenge to know whether your foot's on the brake or the gas pedal and not having to look down to check, you're trying to keep your eyes ahead. So I've got a resource handout that I'll be emailing to Todd. And I saw a really interesting YouTube interview with the medical director of the Kaiser Permanente Northern California Movement Disorder Program in Sacramento. His name is Dr. Suketu Kanda. And he was talking about that in his patients who have PD, he said it was really common to have some degree of fatigue, rigidity, and bradykinesia. And he said that sometimes when the eyes are not in sync, a person can have different fields of view, and for some double vision. And he was, recommending this yearly check with an optometrist. And he said, because they can reshape what you're seeing in your field of view by the use of prisms in lenses. And he said that can be really helpful for walking, driving, and helping to reduce falls. The other thing too is that an annual optometrist exam is able to screen for these common, for some people, common eye diseases that come with natural aging. And so this is where we're up to now. So I wanted to show you these photos here because this is what it's like for somebody who has cataracts. Next slide. Macular degeneration. So the center of their vision is really blurred. Next slide. Glaucoma. Next slide. Diabetes, if somebody has not had this managed, this is the retinopathy with that. Slide.
Let's see, Melanie, I'm going to jump in and just throw up a quick poll question. Sometimes I'm getting some challenges between the poll question and the next slide. So let me launch this poll question for folks.
I just launched it, Todd,
Oh, great. Okay, thanks.
and that's on the motor symptoms.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
We'll come back to our other poll question in a few minutes, but if folks could answer that question right now real quick, we can get a gauge of where people sit on this spectrum.
Okay. So Dr. Kunda was saying in his interview that not everyone will develop a resting tremor, but approximately 70% do. And he was saying that bradykinesia, the slowing of movement, is the hallmark of PD. But when you think of the physical skills of driving, muscle rigidity can also affect being able to turn your head, to scan, to look over your shoulder while you need to merge onto the freeway or making a lane change or parking next to a curb. And so blind spot mirrors and larger rear view mirrors can really help. And I have some to show you later in my presentation. So tremors of the leg and muscle rigidity may impact like leg movement, being able to move like between the brake and the gas pedal. That's tied in also with decreased reaction time. And if you have extreme rigidity in the legs or tremor, it can affect how smoothly and how quickly your affected leg can move from the gas to the brake and vice versa, as well as like brake response time, and also may affect how the holding pressure on the brake at a stoplight or a stop sign or an intersection. You need to be able to keep that pressure down so you're not leaping out into the traffic. Motor changes in arms may impact how somebody can turn the steering wheel and the use of turn signals and the operation of controls, wipers, lights, and temperature control. And, the goal is to support you to remain driving for as long as safely as possible. It's nobody's intention to have anybody give up driving earlier than they need to. But the next area that can change is cognition. So next slide, please. So some people with PD may experience changes with attention, processing speed, memory, decision-making, problem-solving, and multitasking. And the changes might result in like difficulty managing intersections, challenging to know when is it safe to make that left-hand turn. And thankfully, we have more cities where they're having a left turn being a protected turn where there is actually a traffic signal. But in some of those country towns, like, my son's in Chico, there are very few of them. And even the students have a lot of challenges with that. Lots of fender benders in those intersections. Decreased reaction times can be challenging to remember a familiar drive route. And the impact on driving is, if something unexpected happens, how quickly can the person notice what's happening and decide how to react? And so I wanted to just talk quickly about processing speed. It's about mental quickness, and it's related to, the speed in which a person can understand and react to the information received, combining visual, auditory, and movement. And I want to really just say really clearly, having slow or poor processing speed, if that was assessed, it's in no way related to intelligence. But there are some signs of slow processing speed that can kind of be a little bit of a red flag for if you are driving, and just to kind of keep an eye on it. If somebody gets overwhelmed by too much information at once, or they need to read more than once to understand that information, needing more time to make decisions or give answers, and missing nuances in conversation and having trouble keeping up with the conversation, having difficulty following directions and routines. So now let's talk about PD and medications. Next slide, Howard. So medications can cause, for some people, daytime sleepiness, a sudden fatigue with not much warning that it's coming on, dizziness, blurred vision, confusion. And so what I would say is that the timing, and so does Dr. Kanda and all the other professionals, the timing of medications is especially important in balancing your dopamine levels so it can control your symptoms and it can improve your driving ability. But also noting that not everyone with PD will experience any medication side effects, and that communication is really critical with your doctor. Next slide. This is the link, and that's going to be in that resource for you. In Dr. Kanda's interview, and I tried to include information in this presentation that is really helpful for just keeping you behind the wheel for as long as possible. He was talking about studies that have shown that if you can exercise at high intensity, and by that they mean, not be able to carry on a normal conversation, 40 minutes, which seems a lot, six days a week, he says that it will change the trajectory of your PD. And he says to start in small time increments, achieve small goals, slowly work up and know your limits, don't overdo it. He says that if it's too much to do 40 minutes, to just do 10 minutes at a time, 4 times a day, 6 days a week. He says that he'd rather see his patients doing that every single day than trying to do 40 minutes and being wiped out and needing a couple of days to rest. He talked about fatigue.
There are 3 simple changes I tell all of my arthritis patients to make. Number 1.
What was that there? Oh, okay. He talks about the fatigue being both mental and physical, part of the territory of having PD. And if you overdo it, you'll need that rest. In this YouTube video, he also talks about diet, vitamin and mineral supplements and the timing of that and how it can help some of the medications. Too much for me to go into here. Talks about sleep patterns. He talked about managing fatigue, and I thought a very useful interview and fairly current, being from July last year. So our next slide, we're looking at what are some of the warning signs to look out for yourself or for your loved one if you're a care partner. And this is particularly for PD. So if there's forward head posture causing decreased neck and trunk flexibility, getting physically stuck during walking or other activities, slow motor, which is what we refer to as physical performance, slow physical performance, medication side effects, daytime sleepiness, that sudden fatigue, or a wearing off, or if there's fluctuations in levels. Fatigue generally, if the person or someone or yourself driving too slow typically, but we see many that are driving too fast. Hitting both pedals with one foot by accident, getting confused with the pedals, having an issue with being slow to identify and avoid potentially hazardous situations, accidents or near misses. Next slide. Close calls, being honked at by other drivers. You know, if your loved one or somebody comes home or a friend says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe the traffic today. Everybody was honking at me." You know, it's a red flag right there. Being unaware of other vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians, missing traffic signals or failing to stop at stop signs or traffic lights, stopping in traffic for no reason, moving into the wrong lane. If you're starting to see a pattern of getting lost, even in familiar areas, so you're driving to and from the store, and then when you get there, then forgetting the purpose of the trip and getting disoriented. Slide. Trouble navigating turns, hitting curbs, driving up and across the median strip, parking incorrectly and confusion at parking lot exits, poor judgment with left turns, friends no longer wanting to ride with you or your loved one. The next one, scrapes and dents on the car with no explanation when you ask, defensiveness and agitation when you try to talk about what you're observing, damage to the garage door or mailbox. And then for some in the later stages, an unawareness of driving errors. They really truly believe they're still a good, safe driver. There's a lack of insight and self-awareness. Next slide. There are some other non-driving warning signs. If the person's starting to have confusion with taking medications correctly, seeing a general decline in ability to do everyday tasks. And research shows that if a person's had 2 or more falls in a year, there's a correlation with having an at-fault collision risk. And loss of strength or balance, changes in physical status and memory loss. Slide. So a lot of families tell me they're unsure and they don't know what to do, and they don't know if their partner or their parent is safe to drive. And I always say, ask yourself this question: would I allow my grandchild or my child to ride alone with my spouse, my mum or my dad? And if you're unsure, go for a ride along. And for drivers, ask a trusted friend or family member to go with you. Ask for honest, constructive feedback. And remember to remain calm. There's nothing worse than having somebody in the car with you and they're anxious and agitated. Try not to give feedback while you're in the car. It can just make things worse. Be specific about what you're observing. Continue to stay calm, smiley face. And if your loved one's unreceptive to hearing your feedback, stay strong. Tell them you'll talk about it another time. Revisit the conversation the next day. And this is really important to discuss this as soon as possible, especially if memory is becoming an issue. And then explain what the next steps are. Now let's talk about how to have what can often be an anxiety-producing conversation. And this often can bring families to their knees because nobody wants to be the bad guy. And I say for everyone, be prepared. Plan for future transportation. I like to be a resource for you. You can call me about anything related to driving and I will connect you with who I can. There's absolutely no cost with that. Just your time and my time. I'm here to support as many people as I can to stay safe on the roads. If you need to find out what local resources are in the Berkeley, Oakland area, I can give you all of that and be in that resource list I was telling you about. I've also included a list of private transportation options too. They usually cost a lot more, but there are some choices. So one of the things is being prepared. So making a list of safety medical concerns and knowing what the legal and licensing requirements are, and really encouraging people to plan early, especially with a progressive condition like this, getting your financial affairs in order, trust state, having a healthcare directive. Slide. Encouraging families who are having to have this conversation to be strategic, really think about who in the family is the best person to talk about this. And usually it's the person that's the closest to the driver where there's a concern. Some family members may not even acknowledge there's a problem, and having an awareness that the driver may lack insight. Need to understand that there will be some resistance. That's fairly normal. And it helps to find out what that driving means to the person. And I encourage everyone to remain positive. You've got to focus on what you can do. You've got to be sensitive, but you've got to be resolved if so. Slide. So opening up the discussion. If it's appropriate, acknowledge your driver's past driving record and experience, and note that things have changed. And one thing that really seems to help is blame the medical condition of the person. Don't personalize it. Discuss the implications of having a crash. Nobody wants to be in that terrible position where something like this has happened. Be responsive to concerns and focus on the need for a driving assessment. And the number one thing is really knowing your transportation options for yourself, for your loved one, for whoever you're taking care of. Know what those options and resources are before you talk. It seems to make that whole conversation a lot easier from what I've been hearing for everyone. And there are professionals like a geriatric care manager or an aging life care professional who can help mediate if there is tension and you're getting nowhere in the family. Slide. Yep. So it's usually the physician who will either tell their patient, I don't think you should be driving anymore, or they'll make a referral to a driver rehabilitation specialist for a full-on evaluation. And so they have this terminology, driver rehabilitation specialist, known as a DRS, and then certified driver rehabilitation specialist. They've had like additional training and they have knowledge about all the medical conditions and they can complete the evaluation. Some of them will have a background in occupational therapy. Some of them are driving instructors like I am, but everyone's gone on to have additional training. There's usually a clinical in-office component and an on-road. And depending on how Parkinson's is impacting a person's driving, a specialist can offer training to improve driving skills along with adaptive driving aids. My service is for people who have PD. They may have other medical issues, but it's where there's a concern that medications may be interacting with the cognitive abilities and compromising driving safety, or it might be that they're taking medications that are interfering, or it might be that, the person's fallen twice in the past year and the family's starting to see changes. So the kinds of folk that I can help assess are people where there's a change in thinking, their mental fitness to drive. Once I complete my training, I'll be in a position to help people who are having some physical challenges with being behind the wheel.
Melanie, a quick time check. We're at 30 minutes. I think you're
Right. Okay. I think we're done pretty well. So my next slide was about, the driver. So next slide, please, was, about the driver license situation where that gets suspended. Now what? But I think it'll be really great to hear from Michelle. So let's move on from that and we can have a round table. So the next slide. So this is what happens in my practice, a DCAT, and it stands for Drive-Able Cognitive Assessment Tool, and it's using science and technology out of Canada, a company that's been around for 22 years. That this is all they focus on, and I'm a licensed assessment provider, and so this computerized cognitive assessment is measuring all of the driving skills as they relate to cognition And then it's comparing those results to somebody the same age. It's standardized, so everybody has the same assessment, and it's predicting risk, and it's also predicting how well the person will perform on the road in the specialized on-road evaluation. Next slide, please. The goal of this technology is that just because you're 84 or you have Parkinson's doesn't mean that you're an unsafe driver. I recently had a gentleman in who was in fact 84, and his doctor said, people your age should no longer be driving. And he got really angry about that, found out about me, came in, did the in-office and the on-road, and he was still safe to drive, you know. So that is the goal of this technology. They set about doing that. They've done a really great job. And the flip side, we want to be able to accurately identify people that are cognitively unsafe. And we do that by using science, technology, by making sure it's standardized, it's objective, to give accurate and fair information. The drive-able assessment technology, they had 8 years of initial research. It's ongoing. They're going to be bringing iPad technology to highway patrol to be able to assess drivers that they pull over where they think they may be drug impaired, because depending on what drug's been taken, that will affect driving differently. It's technology that's been extensively peer reviewed. If any of you would like that information, just send me an email. I'm happy to share that. And over 120,000 assessments have been performed around the world, with over 80,000 in North America. And so just want to say it's technology, it's an assessment for people that are experienced drivers. Okay, next slide, please. This is what it looks like. It used to be a clunky computerized system. Now they've moved to an iPad, and this iPad rotates in this stand, and it's assessing now 4 task areas. It takes about 45 minutes. It's measuring the interaction of cognitive abilities at that point in time. There's practice opportunities. The person's not alone. Part of my job is to make sure that you fully understand what's being asked of you. There's a color report. I do not send the report to the DMV. You as a driver or your loved one is in charge of who gets access to a copy of the report. We follow HIPAA very closely, unless it's a case where a physician or a neurologist has referred. Next slide, please. This is what one of the assessment room looks like, and you'll see there's like a big sheet of plexiglass anchored to the desk. I won't be taking that out, but I can kind of reach around it. We follow fairly strict protocol around COVID and flu. I have an air purifier and everything's sanitized before and after, and I wear a mask and gloves, and yeah, we take it very seriously. Slide. So some people need to come, depending on where they score, they need to come back for further evaluation. And so there's another second part of the assessment called DOOR, which stands for Drive Able On-Road Evaluation. Excuse me, get some water. But for the most part, not everyone needs to have the on-road evaluation. It really depends if you need more information. This is nothing like a DMV on-road test that focuses on road rules. It's, again, scientifically validated. It's a fair and objective assessment. And the car is dual control, brake and gas. And what we're looking for are specific behaviors, specific actions that somebody with a cognitive impairment is making that's different to a normal, healthy driver. We don't score any of the bad habits, because as we all get older, we all have bad habits, me included. It takes about 45 minutes. We have a specialized road course here in Pleasanton, and it's standardized for fairness in urban and rural areas. And yeah, it's helpful. That one's just really a pass or a fail, but there is a lot of information provided in the report about whether you know, in terms of looking at other risk. Next slide, please. And just read that. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like. Brake and gas pedal, dual control. Next slide. Have those little pop-ups, and so I've got it on. I've got the same slides going here on my screen because it's much for me to manage that. So how to schedule an assessment. So we try to have the service be easy to access, confidential and affordable. I have drivers call me all the time, or a concerned family member. I give a complimentary confidential consultation. There's no need for a doctor's order or a referral, but drivers can self-refer. Family members often request the assessment, but the driver needs to give consent as to who can receive a copy of the report as well as participating in it. And I say it again, really need for that whoever comes in to have had a vision exam in the past 12 months. I had a lady come in with cataracts, unbeknownst to her, and it really skewed the results, and to the point where I was like, this isn't making sense for her diagnosis. So turned out she had cataracts, she had those removed, had that surgery, and then she was back 6 months later, retested, and she was cleared to drive. You can call the office or send an email via our website. I send out a welcome packet. There's a number of forms, and you bring that back with you on the day of your assessment. Unfortunately, driving assessments are not covered by insurance. So just to give you an idea, to do the first portion with my service is $400. It's private pay. We are third party. And then to do the on-road, if the person needed that, is $325. Slide, please. And so then the next part is, oh my goodness, you know, the assessment results. And many families may get anxious about all of that. It's a stressful time when you're having your driving assessed, whether you're at the DMV or you're coming in here or you're seeing a driver rehabilitation specialist. So we try to make it as stress-free as possible. I see many families where they don't want to be the one to explain the report, and I'm available to be, you know, to meet either after the assessment or another time to talk about that. Depending on the results and family dynamics, some drivers, their spouses and adult children need additional support, and I'm always available to make a referral to a direct care manager to get some additional support. Depending on the stage of PD and other medical conditions that may be surfacing and medication management, sometimes there's a reassessment process, and I'll work with families and the drivers around that. And it's a critical period if the test results show that the driver really, it's no longer safe to drive, and a decision's been made by the family or the doctor or the DMV driver safety office, and you know that they're not going to be returning to driving in the future. We know from some research that those next 6 months after someone stopped driving can really be emotionally hard and physically difficult. And the risk of depression is really high in that 6-month period, especially if that person lives alone due to social isolation or loss of independence. So it's really important to have a transportation plan in place so that it's an easier transition top of emotionally what's going on. Next slide. There we are. Adaptive driving aids. So I just thought I'd just include a few here, and you may already know all about them. The first one, the round one, is a swivel seat cushion. You can buy those on Amazon, and they have like 2 layers, and they help to get your legs in and out of the car. The next one is a grab bar that goes inside of the door jamb, and they're wonderful. You can move them, you know, horizontally or facing out. And, you know, sadly, with all of that flooding that we had, where so many lost their lives, that steel part can be used to break the window. The third one along is for people who have cars where they don't have an easy to access bar inside to kind of help lift themselves up and get out of the vehicle. That goes around the window. And then the fourth one is like a seatbelt puller, which can help if you've got, if it's hard to reach behind you to grab that seatbelt, it'll help guide it down smoothly. And then on the bottom row, we have an oversized rear view mirror. Tons to choose from on Amazon. This one just kind of clips on, but it reaches out beyond that back window into, out into the side of the vehicle. And then the next photo shows some blind spot mirrors, and then you can get round ones. You kind of need to kind of see which ones will be good for your car. And then highly recommend the last photo, highly recommend the seat belt extenders. And this is by a company called Seatbelt Extender Pros. You type in there what kind of car you've got, the model, whether you want for the driver, the passenger, the rear. And they have coupons, and I have them in my cars because I have some close friends that, I'm trying. Slide. This slide is going to be in your resource handout, just some tips for maintaining optimal driving safety. And we pretty much talked about most of this, but taking care of your eyes, really number one. Staying as fit, as active as possible. If you can, incorporate stretch exercises for your neck and for your trunk. Try and maintain good posture. Lumbar cushions can help reduce the back strain when you're sitting and driving. Taking your medications on time. Please don't double down on a dose if you were to come in for a driving assessment or see a driver rehabilitation specialist. I've had a few people that have tried to do that, thinking it would help control the tremor. Plan for regular rest periods throughout the day. Follow a good nutrition plan and avoid and any recommended supplements. Plan your driving route before you get in the car. Be familiar with GPS. And adjust your driving habits as needed, common sense, avoiding highways, rush hour, evening commute traffic and nighttime driving. And if you're not sure where things are at, always, ask a trusted friend or family member to go for that ride along with you. The AARP Smart Driver course is a really terrific way to brush up your defensive driving skills and your knowledge. And then if you're seeing significant changes or you're starting to see a pattern, it's good advice to have a driving assessment professional. Next slide. I included some driver assessment providers here in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a big group out of Pleasant Hill, John Muir Adaptive Driving Program. They do in-office and on-road, but you do need a physician's order referral. This slide is also going to be in the resource that'll be emailed to Todd. And then there's also private practice providers, not many. We really need more of them in the Bay Area. But Mark Samuels and Derek Scott, they cover kind of all of the Bay Area, and they look at the visual, physical, cognitive, and sensory issues. And then there's me, and I'm looking at cognitive. But once I complete my certification, I'll be in a position to cover those other areas as well. Then I've included also information about transportation and mobility options. Be great to know if, today, if you know of others, it's always good. I'd love to hear if you know of other services that are helping. Next slide. GoGo Grandparent. I hear mixed reviews about this service because it's using Uber and Lyft, and sometimes those drivers can cancel the ride. I have one client who's having a really tough time with them right now, so I'm curious to hear what people's experience has been. But there is a new group called Onward Rides, who's owned by Royal Ambulance. You might have seen their vans around the Bay Area. Well, they bought this subsidiary called Onward Rides, and they provide companion rides door through door. And they hire employees who are trained in wheelchair and walker assistance, but they can help get you to, if you had to have surgery, needed mild sedation or general anesthesia, they can help provide a ride to and from. They also help with dialysis appointments. They can be really long, many hours. Oncology, physical therapy, post-surgery. They also help with rides for groceries and picking up your medications and even everyday outings. So this will be in your handouts. Next slide, please. And then I always get asked about how do I report an unsafe driver? And I want to be anonymous. So I just included some information here. But I do want to let you know that if you do want to be anonymous, you still have to fill out your phone, your address, your driver's license on the form. But then there's a bunch of check boxes of what you've observed. And if you knew the person, and you can also check other boxes as well. And when you check the confidentiality box, they will call you, the driver safety office in Oakland will call you to clarify the information you provide. Physicians are mandated where there's cognitive impairment, medical condition, or a lapse of consciousness condition, or, people that have epilepsy. But yeah, it'd be great to hear from you, Michelle, about your experience. I have not heard anything negative about dealing with the driver safety office. You're assigned a case manager who follows you through from beginning to end, and you're able to reach them. It's a fairly different experience to the DMV for many people. The DCAC, that's kind of the abbreviation for my service. Touch wood, I've not had to report an unsafe driver, because when people come in to see me, they're not driving. We encourage them to get a ride in. So it's usually with a supportive friend or a family member. And if somebody's assessed as no longer being safe to drive, usually the family or the physician is involved. Not always the physician. So, but if I was to find out information that, if they were to say to me, I've had no luck getting my dad to stop driving, he's still driving, haven't taken away the keys, then, of course, I have a duty of care and some ethical obligations, and we would be having a conversation about that. But I'm not a mandated reporter. Next slide. Nearly there. This is what the form looks like. And see at the top, you need to fill out quite a bit of information. Some people know the condition. Some people only know the behavior. So this is for anyone, any age, anyone who's got a driver's license. If you live in a neighborhood where you've got concerns about somebody driving you, anyone in our community can report. Next slide. Should be page 2 of it. Oh, there we are. This on the far right, you can see on the second line, check here if you would like to have your name kept confidential. Confidentiality will be honored to the fullest extent possible. Unsigned reports will not be considered. So you still need to sign it. Next slide. And this is my contact information. And that's the end of my presentation.
That's
Thank you.
terrific, Melanie. Thank you very much. And we will have, as Melanie referenced a few times, a resource page that we will put up on the website also for folks to refer back to. In fact, that may be more effective and productive than copying, for example, the chat notes at the end of this session. So
yeah. I did want to also say, I have this brochure, Driving Skills Can Change, What Are the Warning Signs? And inside of it, it's a checklist very specific to Parkinson's. And if you're seeing, usually, if you're seeing several warning signs or you're starting to see a pattern, it's a good idea to have a driving assessment, and you'll have those resources on who to contact. And then on the other side, it says, asking about the ride along and how to manage that. And then also about having a conversation. And then on the far back, it still continues over, but there's also some self-assessment tools there as well. So that's been emailed to Todd, and if you'd like a copy of that, you can get that all out to you. But yeah, thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to hearing questions and doing my best to answer, and yeah, being a part of it.
great stuff, Melanie. Very interesting and loaded with good info. So we will have that uploaded to the website also. But without further ado, I'd like to jump straight ahead to Michelle. Let's see, Michelle, I'm going to find your name here in my participants and make sure once again that you are a co-host. Hang on a moment. Okay. As a reminder, before we introduce Michelle and have a little backstory from her, you may submit questions to anyone, Melanie or Michelle or any of us, via the chat window. I see a couple coming in now, but as we hear from Michelle, that's where you'll lob your questions, and we'll start fielding those. Monique and Kathy and I will start fielding those as they come in. Michelle, hi. Thanks for being so patient waiting. I see you down there. And how are you? Why don't you give us just a short 5 or 10 minute rundown on your experience with PD and how that morphed into an experience with the good old DMV.
Okay, thanks, Todd, and thanks, Melanie, and everyone else who's here tonight. Today is actually the 11th anniversary of when I was officially with PD, idiopathic long onset PD specifically. And I think that's relevant in terms of PD affects people and in my case, it was my husband who had noted that my arm was pain when I would go out walking. And in the same way, I can connect that in these really important and often difficult conversations that we are, whether we have to park the car. I moved here from the East Coast, and so at that point had to apply for my driver's license in this state. And then what happened was it was time to renew it. Time had passed to renew that driver license, as they call it, driver, not drivers. And I had a form that I had to complete.
We've got a little bit of freezing on your end, Michelle. I'm not sure if others are seeing that.
Yes.
Your image and your audio are slowing down. I'm not sure if you've got any
So,
internet
sorry
users
about-
in the house right now.
okay.
Still slowing down. Is anyone
And
experiencing the
my-
same delays and slowdowns? Or is it just me? Yes, Anne?
Yeah, I'm also
Is
sensing
it-
that.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's do this. Try again, Michelle. And if it's problematic, then we might just run to a couple questions and then come back to you again if things open up again. It sounds like it might be a bandwidth issue on your end, but I don't want to throw knives at you yet until we figure this out. So let's try it again and let's see how the
How it goes. Yeah. So I'm in terms of a renewal, I filled out a form about the medical condition. And so I have a lot of distractions, which are Melanie things and multitasking and cognitive assessment. I filled out the form and then I realized that I had a lot of therefore to complete with this system. And oh my. Sorry about this.
That's quite all right. No problem. We all get it.
Yeah.
You're among friends. So
Thank you. So what I'll say is that for me, it was a positive experience. People think of the DMV and often think of bureaucracy, and there are the bureaucratic aspects, but if you use the DMV website specific to California, I think you can get a lot of up-to-date information, the adaptive devices that Melanie spoke of, about the requirement. And I don't see it as a black either or issue. It's more normalized, just like aging. And privileged enough as I've been to have the kind of health insurance and other abilities and the access, then you can find that, for example, with your annual physical, to let that be an opportunity, then have your vision checked, or to have a with loved ones who might be noticing
Mhm.
things about your driving. And Melanie touched upon how prepared and planning ahead are important. And that's not all the cognitive process, motor issues, non-motor issues, and Parkinson's. So it's the physical aspect in terms of literally, let's say, and then being able to process information in a timely and safe manner. And so I think is the form of in terms of the consideration when we're doing, and also there's some things that you all, Melanie had mentioned, was like for example, the tech and the advances in the evolution of cars. So again, these are things that are normalized now. And also, if you do have the fortune of positive relationship with your care providers, and there's a team, again, these issues don't sneak up on you. They're rather just woven in the fabric of your everyday, in a sense, I think. And something else called the Real ID. And I hadn't applied for that with my, fortunately, the date that the government has been to 2025.
Applied for what, Michelle? Can you tell us again?
It's called the Real ID. It's a
Real ID,
kind of,
yeah.
it's a subgroup.
Yep, I finally got mine.
They say that you'll need it to be able to board domestic, as well as to enter certain federal buildings and other, so the little details. Again, you can find at the DMV website. I can put that link up after if you'd like. Trying to think if there are any questions, maybe that's the way to go at this point.
Sure, I'll start you off with one, Michelle. You mentioned how the DMV used to be viewed as sort of the three-headed fire-breathing dragon, and nobody wanted to go there because they might just never come out. But they have gotten better, and their website has gotten much better. It's matter of fact now that we renew our registration online and don't have to go wait in line. And of course, they're charging service fees for that. So if that's the convenience that you've experienced, were there any particularly prickly, unenjoyable parts of that experience with the DMV that you'd like to warn us about?
Well, what I want to clarify is I had tried to renew my license online, and because of condition, I was unable to do so. So that was the difference for me, because I wanted to be clear that I had the Parkinson's. But prickly areas, when I was told that I would have my hearing based on a medical evaluation, that just triggers it on. But I heard that I was going to have to go to Orange County, and I live here in Wisconsin. And so I had to make a few phone calls to have the scheduled. And at first it was going to be at another location. Finally, it was in the place where I live. And so that was it's really important that you try to have a self-assessment, I think. Forms that you, as Melanie had mentioned, to stay calm, approach things, have that be your entry point. Because if it's something that's new for you and it's something that's not intuitively easy to talk about, like, trying to be calm is helpful in the long run.
Sure.
And I had also been told that I needed to have a drive test. And so that was okay because in the gap time that it took to have a drive test to literally go out on the road, I was issued a temporary, and so I thought that that was there, and that was definitely helpful. I think being able to see what your walkability, what that's like is really helpful in terms of the PD, the need to use a car in the first place. And
And do you
quickly,
remember, sorry, Michelle, to interrupt. Do you remember, and Melanie, maybe you can chime in too. We've seen the costs estimates for assessments, private side that Melanie posted. Are there significant costs for filing the forms through DMV, or are they just sort of the usual trivial $15 here, $20 there?
from one fee that I had, and this was maybe let's see, it was 5 years already. So I don't know what that would be today. Not sure, Melanie, if you have anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think is it around $37? I could look it out. Not really too sure about the cost.
That sounds about sort of the DMV sweet zone. That's what they usually charge for different things like that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it's like now, but in terms of that, of the long time, the wait time in terms of literally waiting in a line, if you haven't for hearing, then you can go in front of that line when there are doors. So not, so again, to remain calm and then to ask questions and to just to have information going in. People have been very helpful. with
That should be a
hearing.
t-shirt.
And like
Fee.
session here was, you have to know that when you have a hearing, it's good. And so that's in terms of your medication and just knowing when you'd be able to be at your optimal to actually participate in such an interview.
Let me turn to the audience and ask if there are any questions that anyone has right now. I don't see an active chat window, but nothing specifically. Any questions for Melanie or Michelle? Anybody? Oh,
You know,
sorry.
Todd, there was a question about what are the legal insurance implications of getting into an accident if there's a diagnosis of PDD. So
Good for you. There
I'm-
is.
I think if you have I'm not an attorney, so I can't give legal advice, but if you have been honest and upfront about your medical condition and you have a driver's license, I think that you would be treated as like any other citizen behind the wheel. But if your license was suspended or revoked, then that's a completely different situation. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure of those implications. If there are any, if it's you're still there to drive. I would advise that you call your insurance provider about that.
That's a good idea. And Robin does have a question here that slipped past my radar. Anyone have any recommendations for transportation in San Francisco? Grocery shopping, nighttime events, spontaneous daytime errands, other than the multitude of services that are out there like Uber and Uber Eats. And do you know, Melanie, does your resource list cover San Fran?
I don't have a lot on that right now, but I am happy to research and come back to you.
Great, thank you.
I did find a website. I put it in the chat, and it's for San Francisco accessibility paratransit.
Great, I see that. Good for you.
And I found one for Hope that's East Bay paratransit, and so I can put that in the chat for everyone as well.
Terrific.
Yeah, but they're not open in the evening, so nighttime events would probably have to be something else.
I hope that helps, Robin. Are there any other questions with the audience we've got now? Anybody have any questions for Melanie or Michelle? Gabe? Somebody's muted. Hope, go for it.
Hi, Hope and Lee. So wouldn't my auto insurance company really like to know about my health issues? And they don't ask anything. I renew every year and it's like the same amount of money. And no talk about Parkinson's or any other disease or anything like that. Seems weird because currently they're actually monitoring people's speeds who have insurance with them and seeing that people are following the laws. Like if you're driving 45 and a 35, they're going to know if you've signed up for this kind of, customized insurance that's going to save you money. Because,
Because they plug a dongle into your dashboard and they're watching you.
they know a lot about me, but they don't want to do anything with the information.
Melanie, have you heard about this insurance coverage that is cheaper if you allow them to plug a microchip into your dashboard to monitor how fast you're going and what zones and things like that?
Sounds frightening to me. No, I haven't.
That's what you're talking about, right, Lee?
They advertise like regularly on KQED. And it's like Progressive Insurance customizing your rates for blah, blah, blah. And I had the same thing with, they had me wear Apple Watch kind of thing. And it's my kind of health insurance provider. And they wanted to see how much I was walking a day and stuff like that. So then they could figure out how much to charge me. It's not usual.
It kind of raises a lot of concerns, really, doesn't it, in terms of privacy? And if you think about it, insurance companies are also making a lot of money. I don't know, is it for a risk assessment? I mean, I don't know enough about it to give a comment.
Yeah, when you talk about your service isn't covered by insurance companies, you're talking about health insurance companies.
Health insurance, yes.
Interesting. Has anybody else had an experience with driving and health and driver's insurance and the like with regard to PD? No? Okay.
I did just want to say, Todd, there was another question about Berkeley providing rides to seniors. Janet was saying she didn't know what it was called. It'll be in your handouts. It's the Mastic Senior Center, and they have a volunteer driver program. And there's a great gal, Catherine Cat, who is a contact. I've put her direct number in that list as well. She'll be able to help you with all of this.
I can also personally recommend the group Life Elder Care, Melanie, that you put up on your resource page. I've worked with them, and that's a good group that provides services to seniors.
I will scan those pages and get that to you either tonight or first thing in the morning.
Okay.
My other scanner was not working, but you should have the other brochure. Good questions, everyone.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the websites I found were all the public paratransit websites for the different cities, for East Bay, San Francisco, and Berkeley. So there are a lot of other options. So we'll get more information to everybody.
And a lot of those just to keep in mind, a lot of those paratransit options are what they call a shared ride. And quite often there's no hierarchy in the paratransit programs that are run by the counties and the cities, in that if somebody needs to go to dialysis or somebody's going to get their hair cut, it'll be kind of whoever's first on. So it's good to ask those kind of questions when you are signing up. But they usually are a very affordable way to get around town if you're no longer able to drive. But there are other options. The volunteer driver programs are wonderful because you make new friends out of that as well. Yeah.
I have a couple questions for our audience. how many folks in this group have made the hard decision to stop driving? Show of hands. I have not. Ilana, Christopher, and Michelle. So Michelle, your status right now is not driving. Is that right, Michelle? Oh, she can't hear me.
Okay.
And Christopher and Alana, maybe you can chime in and tell us a little bit about your experience with having the sort of your decision-making process and having the challenging conversation with the family. Was it easy for you, Christopher, for example, to make the decision and just cut your license in half, or was it a bit of a bumpy go?
No, it was a very difficult decision, but it was prompted by two things that have been talked about here. One was I have a granddaughter who is visiting, and she's worth paying attention to. She's a lieutenant in the Army.
So,
And she said to me, "I don't like driving with you. You're too reckless."
oh,
I've never been accused of that. But I took it to heart. If I'm scaring anybody in the car, I don't want to be driving.
right. That's
Short time later, I had a very minor accident in a parking garage, very minor, but I had an attack of Parkinson's. I had an attack of anxiety that was just awful. I went into full body tremor.
Mm.
Fortunately, I was administered to by the security person at the bank whose parking lot I was in, who said, "I'll help you with all of this. Don't worry about it." But that I decided on the way home, driving home from that incident, that I needed to do something about being a danger to people on the road. And I decided to stop driving.
Good for you. That sure seems like the most grown-up approach. I'm sure that there are alternative stories out there, if not among our community, that might put a chill in our bones. Ilana, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, it's kind of similar. My daughter was being pressuring me to stop driving, saying that I'm not a safe driver. My sister was visiting and she also said, "I don't want to drive with you, you're not safe." And then a few weeks ago, I ran into a tree because I pushed the wrong pedal. And that was it for me. I said, I didn't say much as my daughter told me, "You are not going to take that." And I decided to stop myself, and I moved to a senior housing because of that. I'm not sure if I was ready, but I'm here. And I think it was the right thing to do. I was really afraid to hurt somebody. And hurting a tree, the tree didn't care, but it was a lot of money to fix it. So, yeah. And I followed the steps from DMV, and I realized that I'm meeting almost all the criteria not to drive anymore. I can't confess all of them, but that was my end of driving.
Wow. Well, those are two good examples of how to do it right. So congratulations to you both. Michelle.
Yeah, the reason why, in terms of my gesticulation like this, is that I feel most comfortable being a safe driver within a certain radius of familiarity and so with experience. And I wanted to say that with regard to having it renewed or maintaining it, that there are these relations that can be worked out, such as not driving in the evening or limiting your driving to areas, a freeway, for example.
And the DMV is open to that.
In terms of you being to plan, that's what I was implying earlier when I said all or nothing. But Christopher and Ilana, it is really hard and nuanced, and I mentioned how studies and how helpful it was, but it's these everyday experiences and getting the feed, and I think balancing it with the resources. The last thing I wanted to add that I haven't forgot to mention before is how question of the disease and the different resources or ways to maintain it, such as, for example, I guess therapy almost a year ago, and prior to that, I was paralyzed and so thus was not driving. But then once I had the deep on less medication, so to lower the medication and then to heighten my ability to not have the tremor and others was important. So I just wanted to add that it's not always linear.
And did you, Michelle, did you opt for a ride along as Melanie presented in her presentation, or did you not need to get to that stage?
For the ride along. No, right now it's something I'm thinking about in terms of, again, when I mentioned non-motor symptoms before anxiety, in terms of anxiety. So for me, for example, rather have someone else drive or do or taken a. I had used Uber in the past or a bicycle. I rent a bike, and that was at a time when I wanted to pick up my daughter from school and just how, whether I was on or off in terms of PD and the medication time. So it's still something that I'm working through and my family and trying to do the best.
Right. And Melanie, Michelle talks about on or off. You mentioned in your presentation that you thought it not a good idea to up your dose prior to a driving assessment or
No, because you just don't know. You don't know how that will transpire, and the driver rehabilitation or the driving evaluation, they're trying to assess where you are currently at that point in time, and then looking also at what aids, is there training they can do with you? Are there driving adaptive aids beyond what I've shown you that can help? And so it's kind of like a false sense of security if you do that. I think the takeaway is, if things are not feeling good for you with the medication that you're taking, you need to really clearly communicate that with your healthcare team, because, even slight adjustments can make a really big difference. But yeah, I wouldn't say to be double dosing or whatever.
So, but standard dosing. I mean, we certainly
Standard, just do what you normally do. Whatever. Certainly when somebody comes in to see me, I ask, and it's in writing, that they continue with whatever normal regime it is, whether it's even having a cup of coffee in the morning or breakfast, whatever medications they normally take, and just keep the status quo. Yeah. And if somebody comes in and they don't feel well, or there's a lot of anxiety, we can suspend the assessment, and I can save those results for 10 days, and the person can return. But there's some options around that. Certainly with me, I don't know what that's like with other providers, but I'm the only one here in the Bay Area that's offering this drive-able assessment technology, and not needing, as I was saying, that doctor's referral. So families, my experience is a lot of families wanting, couples, they want to keep control of that kind of early stages.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, it is at the top of the hour. In fact, it's a minute past, and I do believe we should sign off here and let folks get off to a romantic, if late,
Happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day dinner. I'm sorry we did this to you on Valentine's Day. I'm glad we got such a good show out. And Michelle, thank you very much for your candid input on this sensitive subject. Christopher's off, but thanks to him and Alana as well. Melanie, huge thank you to you for your great information. That deck is chock full of lots of valuable tips.
You're very welcome.
As mentioned many times, we will have both of the recording of this whole presentation up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and the slides that Melanie presented saved onto our pdactive.org site. An email will be going out to all registrants with those links in the next couple of days. So thank you again to all of you for participating and joining us on this weekday evening, and happy Valentine's Day from PD Active. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.